sitters. And he foolishly believes that I'm a good teacher. I don't know, I'd like to say that Sunshine has changed a lot over the time that I've been here. And I remember when I first arrived, we didn't have the tests like we do. We have the bi-semester test now, 2 semesters every semester. And unfortunately, a lot of what we're judged on, or all the teachers are judged on, are our test scores. Because the manager sitting in, we're not filming yet, right? The manager sitting high up in his ivory tower can only see, okay, you can see a score and say, well, there's a problem there, there's a problem there. Oh, well, maybe there are lots of different reasons. Sometimes you get a really bright class, sometimes you get a slow class, sometimes you have some troublemakers in the class. Everybody has a different experience. And I know even with all of my experience, every time I get a new class, I literally do things in my underpants because I'm so scared. Anyway, I think the point is, like, for the managers, you're looking to maybe give newer teachers some ideas, right? And I can share one experience of when I first arrived in Taiwan. I came here when I was 19, and obviously I hadn't been to university. And I was planning to stay for a year, maybe 6 months, and then go back home. But I found a job and I fell in love with the country. I was working at a school called Joy. And I remember I'd been here about a year and a half. And for some strange reason, they asked me if I would be interested in working at the head office to help them develop a curriculum. And I had no idea what I was doing even at that time. So I was invited to a teacher training class. And it was probably one of the most embarrassing experiences of my life, because I was happy to go there. I felt important. I'd been invited. Not all the teachers had been invited, so I thought, yeah, I'm in this company. And there was an instructor there, and he wrote a couple of words down on the whiteboard. I remember it was like fly and run. And he said, okay, guys, we're going to just begin by discussing, you know, like how we break down the words for children. So he said to me, okay, so maybe just one of you guys could give me a verb. And he pointed at me. And I froze. Do you know why? No. I didn't know what a verb was. Oh, no. And my whole life flashed before me. And I looked at the board and I saw fly, run, jump? Yes. Okay, next one. So I know what it's like but I'm sure that some of you, most of you, you've much better education than I ever had. So you come here, but even still, even with a good education, teaching can be a very, very scary task, and it takes a long while for us to learn. And I'm still learning, and I still feel nervous when I get a new class, and some units terrify me. Some units. And today I've been asked to talk about this unit, which is it's about modal verbs. I always call them modal verbs, which is wrong. And it's a very, very long and very complicated unit. Well, I feel it is. And I'm pretty sure if I'd done it many, many years ago when I first arrived, I probably would have just opened the book and said, okay guys, and then I would have looked at the rules, because you always get a set of rules, as you can see here on this first page of the unit. So the first thing it says here is you've got to teach the meaning of can and could. So maybe if I was new, I'd be going through all of the rules, blah 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 blah, and talk. Hey, do you understand? The children go, yeah, I'm sure they do. Okay, let's get to it. Let's start writing. And then, of course, you get kids who weren't paying attention. Some kids will be able to do it very easily. Other kids, they've got 8 questions and they've got 6 mistakes. And it's totally the wrong way to go about it, I believe. I mean, obviously, sometimes there are some units, there are some exercises that are easier than others. But I would say never take anything for granted. Never take anything for granted, because if you take things for granted, I think you're heading for a fall. So, like I said, it's a really long unit. So, and again, when you're teaching with children, you can have a plan, but you know that sometimes your plans can go out of the window. maybe the children don't understand. And my bad habit is, I think some more people are coming. Hello, maybe I have to sit on the floor. No, this is it. Welcome. I think actually you might have to. Maybe I need some more chairs later. Just one
bigger room.
We could, even before foreigners were teaching in Taiwan, if you ask like the older generation of Taiwanese people, they can probably read, they can probably complete tests, but they can barely make a sentence. So I've always believed that I want to give the children enough time to speak, to practice using these sentences, to give them the oral practice so they can use it. And I do, but you have to find a balance, because sometimes, like for example this sentence here, I sometimes deliberately, I'll explain all this a little bit later, but for example, I'm teaching the word must or mustn't. And I always think that if you can, before class and before starting the books, because I don't know, maybe you'll agree with me, and even though the camera is on, I'm going to say it. Some of the exercises in Roundup are pretty boring. and I've always felt that I could quite easily, copy the style of each exercise, but I like to maybe make the sentences more about things that apply to their lives. Because, for example, if you're teaching the word could as in like the ability that we had in the past. Teaching a 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, they don't have much life experience, So there's very few things that you can talk about with that. Anyway, so for example, something like this, wives. So the topic of this unit, I did write it there. The topic of this unit is must and mustn't. Okay, so I'll just do this first one here. So what would the answer be here, guys? Right? So if I was telling the kids, I would tell them, must is something that we have to do. Sometimes because it's a law. Maybe it's a rule that your parents have made. When you're driving on the road and you see signs like maximum speed 30, so you must stay under 30. So all of the rules that you see around you and the laws, usually we can use must in that situation, but also must can be a choice, right? For example, you can say, I'm sick, I should see a doctor, because you think that would be a good thing to do, it's a good idea. But then must maybe it's a little bit stronger, because it could mean that I believe that if I don't do that, I'm not going to get better, so I must do that. So a lot of the modal verbs, they can be used, there can be multiple answers for sentences. So I've got a few exercises later that I can show you, whereby I encourage children to explore the different possible answers. So for example here, okay, I'm sure the girls will say that
vice versa.
Wives, what?
Vice versa. Husband should obey.
Yeah. And I deliberately try to be sexist sometimes. I will get all the boys and I will say, so boys, what do you think? Wives must obey their husbands. Right, of course. And the girls, no, I shall listen to you. So tell us why wives mustn't obey their husbands. And they'll say, because women are smarter than men. Well, in my case, that's true. So I agree with you, but we're stronger than you, so you must obey us. And then they'll say, yes, but you'll be lonely without us, and you can't have children without us. Yeah, it's a good point, but we are the ones who go and earn the money, right? We are the ones who bring home the bread. Yeah, but lots of women work nowadays too. Okay, you win. Anyway, what I like to do is, because it's a very long unit, and I think that if you just start rushing through it, it's not the best approach. It's not the best way. So this is how I would try to break it, and this is only a suggestion. Like if you take a look at the notes that I've written for you, I've broken it down. So for example, the first week, In 1 week you have 2 hours. 2 hours, and then you have 3 weeks. So you have a total of 6 hours to teach this unit. Sounds like a long time, and it is a long time, but it's also not enough time sometimes. What am I talking about? Okay, so week 1, if you take a look at the notes, I've written week 1, and it says the first hour I would just spend with can and could. Okay, so let me just, I'll just read it for you in case anybody can't read. So, this is a long and challenging unit to teach. Time management. Time management is really, really important in this one. Teacher Gillian over there, the one with the grey hair, is my co-teacher, my wonderful, wonderful co-teacher, who's a really, really big help to me. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about how important it is to have a good relationship with your teacher, because you're a team, and 2 heads are better than 1, for sure. Okay, so time management is very important because there is a lot to explain and practice, and lots of exercises to fill in. Sometimes that can be the most consuming thing when we're doing Roundup, is simply filling in all of the exercises, especially when they aren't really interesting. You know, you can feel like we're doing this exercise just for the sake of completing the book so that it can be marked, you know. And I don't really feel that some of the exercises are very effective. I know Mr. Chen and he's passed the message along to all the managers that it helps that teachers can do more worksheets. And I love doing worksheets because it gives me a chance to make sentences about my students, you know, and then they'll feel much more excited to do it. And also I can maybe make some sentences about some things that are in the news, you know, like my students we enjoyed not enjoyed because it's quite sad, but talking about the Paris attacks, you know, or we're talking about the election. So if ever you're making sentences for students, either the weekly vocabulary or you just want a few sentences on the board to introduce a subject, try and keep them topical, try and keep them interesting, you know, try and be a little bit of a comedian if you can. Okay? So a good idea is to break it up over the course of the 3 weeks you have to teach it in. And here's a suggestion, so it's right there for you. Week 1, first hour. The goal is for the students to know the specific uses of can and could. If you look in the instructions, sometimes they'll say like, for example, could is ability in the past, and can is ability in the present. And a lot of these things, they're grammary things, you know, like the grammar words. And I know sometimes, like when teachers are teaching different subjects, they're always like, okay, you have to put the subject and the object, and you know, or you can change the object to the subject. I don't like teaching like that. It doesn't mean anything to me, you know. And you do need to explain the grammar, but I don't think that you have to just keep on looking over these boring grammar explanations. It bores them before they've even started writing. And if I feel bored, sorry, saliva coming out my mouth. I've got to be careful. Sorry about that. Would you like an umbrella? Situation. Sorry. I know that if I feel bored, the students are going to feel bored too. Also, before I get into the meat of things, according to the schedule, we are supposed to do the 2 hours on the same day. I can't do it that way. I just think 1 hour on one day is enough. So I am following the schedule, Mr. Chen. But I'm not just doing it on the day that I'm supposed to do. It's unfair. I couldn't pay attention for 2 hours to all of this. Plus, if you break it into 2 days, well then into 2 hours on separate days, the next time you come to teach it, you can do a quick review of can and could, and then you can move on to the next group, which mustn't have to, don't have to. Okay? Right, so, like I said, I won't go straight into the exercises. I just think that's, me personally, I don't like to do that. I wanna hear them, and I want them to show me that they're understanding. So, and I always have big classes like this. So, first thing I would do is I'd invite the students. I'd tell them, okay, we're going to learn about can and could. And I'll ask them what they know already. So, what do you know about can? Anybody? What do you know? What does can mean? I'm just going to, sorry if I'm patronizing you, I'll just talk to you like I was talking to my kids. What does can mean? We use can to show ability. We use can to show that we can do something, right? And then could. Can anybody tell me what could is?
Ability in the past.
Oh, have you learned this level before? Yeah. Maybe you should graduate to Teacher Lisa's level. Okay. So could, ability in the past, and I'm sure that a lot of students are going to know what ability is. Well, excuse me. Well, I'll be using that word a lot over the next 3 weeks. Because I want the students to understand the speech situation, not only the meaning. So, I'll tell them also that can is used when we are giving permission. Like, hey, okay guys, you can take a break. Or when you're asking for permission. So, can we take a break, Michael? We're bored and sick of listening to your voice. You know? So, asking for and stating. So, first one. Can anybody tell me the answer? Don't be shy.
I can play computer games.
Okay, oh, you're different to my students. I only get about 5 answers. Okay, so I can play computer games. So in this sentence, what are we talking about when we say I can? What does this mean? You have, remember that word I just said? You have the ability to play games. Really? I think anybody can play games, right? I mean, I can play computer games, but just not very well. So I don't think this is about ability. I can play video games, but other friends cannot because their parents said that they cannot. So maybe, yeah, I'll add a little bit more into this sentence and I'll say, my parents don't mind. Because don't mind was one, if I remember correctly, don't mind, that verb was taught in the previous unit. So although I have a bad memory, I try and keep all the things that I've learned in previous units and try to keep using them when we're learning a new unit. Because so often, 3 weeks is a short time, but I often find after I've taught a unit for 3 weeks, they've forgotten the last one, which makes you panic, especially when the test is coming. So I'll ask them to tell me about themselves. Okay, so do your parents let you play computer games? Can you play computer games? And then they might say, I can play computer games after I finish my homework, right? Or I can play computer games at the weekend. And some people say, oh, I hate my parents, I can't play video games. So then I would tell them, so the situation for this is we're talking about permission. Okay? Okay? And then the next one. This one is something that we can debate too. Oh, by the way, if you spend too long doing this, you could literally spend an hour. I know it sounds amazing, but sometimes just like one sentence that you might use will give you lots of ideas, and suddenly everybody's very interested and everybody's paying attention. You think, great, and then you forget about the time. You turn around, it's 5:30, and your plan is out the window. All right, so you've got to keep it moving. Anyway, people predict the future. Remember what predict means, guys? It means to
Foretell. Able to foretell.
Foretell or to say what will happen in the future. So guys, do you think that people can predict the future?
Yes.
Do you think that there are people who can really do that?
Probably.
Do your parents ever visit fortune tellers?
Yes.
Well, okay, Gillian, I know you're talkative. Do you believe that people can predict the future?
Yes.
Maybe.
Really? Why? Why do you believe that people can predict the future?
They have a crystal ball. They can see it.
They have a what? Do you know that usually the people that have crystal balls, they're just liars. They just want to take your money away from you. They need gullible people like you. But is there anybody in here? Anyway, you don't really have to answer these questions. But I would hope that there will be a few students who will tell me, oh, my mother often visits a fortune teller. and she told me that she should leave my dad. Yes, she did. Why? No, I'll go any further than that. So I can tell them here that actually, in this situation, you might say people can, you could say people can, right? It depends on your belief, on your opinion. To me, I'm cynical. I don't believe in any of that crap. So again, it could be can, it could be can. And again, this situation, we're talking about not permission. Okay, Teacher Michael, you can predict the future. Thank you for letting me predict the future. No, it's not permission, it's ability, right? And also, because we just mentioned it earlier, is it ability in the present or in the past? In the present, okay? Sorry to use myself, but this is probably a true sentence. Teacher Mike, can you have a go? By the way, this sentence is very important because this is the first time that they're going to understand the concept of comparing ability in the present and ability in the past. And Teacher Lisa marks many of the tests that we get each semester. Do you find that students make mistakes sometimes with this when they have to compare? Yeah.
They should.
Don't be shy. Well, because we see the mistakes. Anyway, could you have a go, please? Could? Couldn't, right, because when I came to Taiwan, I didn't even know how to say hello. Teacher Michael couldn't speak Chinese when he arrived in Taiwan 23 years ago. Guys, can you tell me why we are using past tense for this? Huh? 23 years ago. And if this was in their notebook, I would definitely be telling them to take out their highlight pens. I think that every student should have a highlight pen. It is an invaluable tool. Okay, so Teacher Michael couldn't speak Chinese when he arrived in Taiwan 23 years ago, but he can now. Alright, but he can now. Or then you could ask them just to simply turn it around. Michael can speak English now, but he couldn't when he first arrived in Taiwan 23 years ago. And then just after I've done this, I might ask them if there's something that they couldn't do in the past, but they can do now. There's not many things that they will say besides, I couldn't ride a bicycle, but I can now. Yeah. I couldn't split an atom, but I can now. So, and then because also, as we progress through the unit, we're going to want the students to be able to look for clues. You know, there are clues in most sentences. Like here, there isn't much of a clue, because it could be either or, like could be can or can. So sometimes I would tell them, sometimes you have to look at the second sentence. You've got some lazy students, they just look here, choose the answer, and then they realize that it says that, oh, I can play computer games. My mother said I have to do my homework. So then you think, hang on, wait a minute. So you've got to encourage them to read the whole sentence. So sometimes you might highlight a time expression. Sometimes you might highlight a whole segment of a sentence. But get them doing that. On the whiteboard you want. Okay, so here I would tell them, okay, so this is ability in the past versus present, right? In the present. I like to get them to learn the phrase ability in the past and ability in the present. Not that they will ever use it in their daily spoken English. I can't imagine students coming to me in their free time saying, Michael, I have the ability to swim. No. But still, just so that when you say it, they know what you're talking about. Okay, and then we move on to the next one. This is one of the first questions in modal verbs where there are multiple answers. So there's something from their daily life. Because I always ask students, you know, when you're doing a math test at Chinese school, can you use a calculator? Can they? Do you? Do you know if they can or they can't? They can? Oh God. Thank God I'm not a student in this country. I'd be screwed. Right. So, I might say, okay, so you're going to ask the teacher this question. So what would you ask the teacher? You're asking for ability, or you're asking for permission to use? And then slowly, some of them, more and more of them, start getting the idea of permission and ability. So it's starting to sink in. Okay? So again, we're moving quickly. So okay, so what is it? Someone says, can we use a calculator in math class? And then I asked them, so can we? No, we can't. And they said, but do you know there is also another way to ask this question, and it's more polite. So I guess, and then I always tell my students, so none of you need to learn this because you're not polite at all. And I'll explain to them, okay, we can ask can, which is not rude. It's not rude to say can. I use the, it's like, oi, I'm using the bloody calculator. That's rude. So can you, and then could you, and then I will deliberately go around the class and try to be very charming, try to scare all the girls. Could you give me a kiss? Yeah! And they all start vomiting. All right. So in this situation, again, it's asking for permission, and then I'll mention asking for permission. Sorry, I'm making a mess. Asking for permission. I don't normally write this messily on the whiteboard. Actually, I do. And then I'll highlight the fact that it's a polite way to. And then at this point, you know, because again, you want to give them the practice. Something very simple. You could do it, and it'll just be really fast, and it can even be a game. All right. So, what's your name? Aaron, could you take this pen for a moment? All right. And then I would ask the person beside you. I want you to say, can you ask Aaron politely if you could borrow his pencil?
Excuse me?
You can say can you, but can you be very polite and say could you? Like BBC English. Right. Now that's quite slow, and then obviously the person behind you who is not paying attention. Oh, this reminds me of the class. And then you can see it's just a game. Could you pass me a pen? Could you? And then I'll say, come on. Maybe I'll give them like a minute. You know? Teacher Gillian's thinking, you've never done that before. Sometimes, but anyway, and it's just, and then everybody's got, could you? You can even do something stupid like bring a diaper into class. A dirty diaper would be even better. I'm joking, okay? And again, there's some quick practice, and then we move on to the next one. And also over the course of the next few weeks leading up to the test and beyond, I'm going to make sure I keep on using those words. Just like in any time, like, guys, could you be quiet, please, when they're being naughty? Overexpose it to them, you know? I always like to do that. It's the same with vocabulary. When I know they've got 20 words this week, and there are some words that they just learn, boom, just like that. Especially yellow words like underwear. I think underwear and poo is the first word that all kids learn. You try and teach them something useful like thank you, it takes them about 6 years to learn. Right. So again, yeah, and then this one, slightly different. Because you're not asking for permission, because it's just slightly different. So I'll ask them to read it. Could you? Now, I've got bloody there. That would just be a little joke, because I can't help but use that word in front of my students. So again, we got, can you turn off your cell phone? Now I'll ask them, where would you be when you ask someone this question? Movie theatre, probably, right? Or maybe in a classroom. Right, you know, most kids have mobiles now. So, I just did that for a joke. Anyway, so I said, can you turn off your cell phone? I remember what I did with this one. I asked them, I did like from extremely polite to very, very, very rude. And I gave them like 5 sentences. Could you kindly turn off your cell phone, please, if it's no trouble at all? You know, and then it's like, it gets, can you turn off your cell phone? And I will write next to it, I guess someone is losing their patience. Until finally, oi, turn off your bloody cell phone or I'll murder your family. They'll think that's quite fun. And I just said, don't go home and say that to me. If someone says, who taught you that? It was Gillian. It grabs their attention. It grabs their attention because we need humour. We need humour. But sometimes it's hard to be humorous when you have to complete the exercises. I find it a bit of a chore. I've got to be honest. And then again, a little thing like here. Someone, I guess it's a guy, chasing a girl. Not really appropriate for young children, but what the hell. So the woman is like, maybe someone's asked the beautiful woman, excuse me, can I have your email number? I could even maybe get a couple of students to role play it here. So the boys all want to volunteer and the girls, no. Come on. So I get them to come in. And then I ask the girl, okay, you cannot have my email address. And I'll say, well, give me a reason. And they'll say, oh, I'm married. Or, I have a boyfriend, right? Or maybe you cannot have my email because I don't have an email. Or maybe if that girl's single, you say, you can have my email, I'm single. Anyway, there are millions of things, but like it's really, really, really good if you can. Oh, and by the way, if you notice, all of these sentences, basically, well, they do cover every different sentence that is included in the instructions there. Okay? So we've had a little bit of fun with this, and I've introduced the language, and now, when we start doing the exercises, if they make a mistake, I have a point of reference. I'm not sure if you understand what I mean. Because I've introduced it before, I'm not just telling them when they get it wrong. When I say, you got it wrong, and then and they'll go, why? And then they say, well, don't you remember the sentence that I told you when I was talking about, you know, turning off the cell phone when you're in the cinema? You know, yeah, you can use can, but also there's a polite way. Oh, yeah, good. So you know what I mean? So they've heard it before. So I just find that if they make mistakes when they start doing the exercises, it's much easier for me to explain the mistakes that they've made. Because I always think that I want to reduce the mistakes. You're always going to have a few students that aren't the fastest learners. Mentally challenged. I won't use the word that I usually use. Yeah. So, what do you do about a situation like that? Because there are some kids who just don't get it. And I've always felt that everyone can learn, but maybe they can't learn to the same standard. But let's say, imagine, like you've got 5 or 6 different sentences here. If you could teach the slow ones 4 or 5 of them, you know, maybe they might not master the ability in the past versus the present. But if they can get a few of those, well then instead of losing 10 points in the big test, they might only lose 5 or 6 points, you know? And that could be the difference between a score of 75, which is going to maybe make trouble for you, or a class average of 85, 86, maybe even over 90, you know, and then you're going to have a peaceful life. So, yes, you can always get the slow ones to master everything, but I don't want to give up on them. I don't want to give up on them. The only time I give up is when I tell the parents that they need to see a doctor and the parents finally follow my advice. That's when I give up. Okay? So, just continuing. It's important to balance oral practice with written practice. A warm-up activity is a better idea because you can use your own sentences, make it more fun. A good discussion of carefully selected examples written on the whiteboard should make them aware of what they need to know and look out for. Hopefully, this will help you to avoid lots of mistakes when they do their exercises. Because, you know, the rule in Sunshine is that we are not allowed to check books during class time. And I break this rule sometimes. Not always. Teacher Gillian knows that because I'm always catching up with marking when they come to check our books. But sometimes I just feel I need to look at what they've done, you know, just so I can deal with the problem right now. Because I hate it if they make a mistake on Monday and then Tuesday's a holiday. Tuesday they don't come to school and you don't see them till Wednesday, and it's just too much of a gap. I want to deal with those issues right now. Doing an exercise, even when you do an exercise, you have a choice. You can simply let them do it on their own. Now, I would probably do that if I know I've got a smart class. And if I know that I've explained everything and I think, okay, these guys, they're always pretty strong, so go ahead and do it. And then after they've done it, I'll tell them to hurry up, but also, come on guys, make sure you double check. You know, you've got to keep on making sure they double check, because I always find like every mistake they make is like a knife in my heart. I know that sounds dramatic, but it really feels that way sometimes. And then after they've completed the exercise, I have to rely on their honesty, because if I don't have a chance to mark their books, I have to trust that they haven't made a mistake. You could ask them to exchange books, but sometimes, again, they still might miss the mistakes that they've made. So I asked them to stand up. I asked her, who's got the answer for the first one? Okay, and then they hear the answer. Who got it correct? And they all sit down. Hopefully they all sit down. But, you know, I have 25 kids, you might have 2 or 3 still standing. And then, okay, what did you write? And they explain to me what they wrote. And I go, why is that wrong? And they tell me why it's wrong. Or I explain it to them why it's wrong. Say, never mind, better luck next time. Okay, so where is the book here? So we got the first one here. So you've got the first unit here. Sometimes I like to do an exercise like a test, because my goal is I always want the students to be as accurate as possible. Do any of you have problems, the Chinese teachers or foreign teachers, do you have any problems with classes like who are in the 5th and the 6th, 4th, 5th and 6th grade, and they've changed many teachers, had many teachers, they have a teacher for one semester, then a new teacher comes along, and then you find that they're very unmotivated by the time they reach the 5th grade. Some of them don't really care. You had that experience? And I always find that those classes are really, really, really hard to teach. They're probably just, they've seen so many teachers, they just think, oh, another one's coming through the door. Where's this one from? What's this one going to do? But, you know, for example, if you can offer them rewards, not cash, unless you're very rich. And I know that we have the baby cards, and I'm not sure how interested the older students are in doing baby cards. You know the baby cards, like they can change them for presents. Those high quality presents from China. Or maybe some candy, or maybe I'll give them, I like empty threats. If you guys make mistakes, you're not going to have a break. Actually, if you make a mistake, you're still going to have a break, because I want one too. Or, you know, you can make the promise, okay, on Friday, we're going to have time to watch a video. I've got, like, Lisa, you can see here, Lisa has a huge video library, and I do too. And I've got lots of movies that, not the ones that you can see on HBO every 5 minutes. Like Ratatouille, I've seen that about 20 times in the last day. But I've got lots and lots and lots of old movies that I watched when I was growing up, like Gone with the Wind. No, I'm not that old.
That's a classic.
Yeah, it's a classic. But anyway, the point is that, you know, they like the movies. So you can slowly start bringing them around. Well, hopefully you can. Just talking with them, and if you and I do believe that if you show them that you care, maybe they might feel that, and they might start caring too. But I'm no expert in solving problems with a class that has motivation and attitude problems. It is tough. Okay, so here in the second unit, they have to copy the question here or the sentence, and then they have to identify the speech situation. So that's what I was talking about when I was saying, like, you know, go through the ability in the past, ability in the present, asking for permission, a polite request. Can is polite, but what's more polite than can? Could, right. Okay, so yeah, you can go through this, and that will give them again more chance to recognize the speech abilities. And then we got one more exercise here where I think they just focus again on permission and ability, and that's it. So if you have an hour to teach that, I don't think you're going to have much time for worksheets, right? But one thing I know that my co-teacher, Teacher Gillian, does is, how often do you do it, Teacher Gillian? Because every day she'll give me a small piece of paper with maybe 5 or 6 sentences on it, and that's to practice the exercise, the sentences, the patterns of the week.
Only 1 week, 1 time. Then
Only once a week.
once a week.
Seems like every day.
I made a lot of mistakes, and you think it's every
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, if they make lots of mistakes, then we know there's a problem,
Yeah.
and then they have to do more of it, right? And also you'll find that maybe the children, we find that, right? Well, they'll be more careful when I'm in a class because I'm quite mean. And also Teacher Gillian is very mean, but I guess they're not as afraid of her. And then when they go home and there's no one there, they sometimes it's just a rush. They've got so many other things to do. It's like, oh yeah. And then the next day you bring it in, they bring it in, and it's full of mistakes. And that makes you worry, because do you think, is it because they're dumb? They're not learning? Or is it just because they did it at home and they weren't careless? So I always tell them, guys, come on. I don't know. Are you learning, or is it because you were careless? I was careless. Yeah, right. So the punishment would be death. No, but maybe to repeat those questions, and also look for the areas where they have problems. You know that we have weekly tests as well. Oh, and in case I forget, everything that you're teaching in this unit, okay, it's only going to be tested unless Mr. Chen decides to change his mind again. And he does that quite often. Is multiple choice. You're going to get some, it's all going to be tested in multiple choice. So for example, you could have like, could blank I borrow your pen? And then there's going to be, shall I borrow your pen? Must I borrow your pen? Could I borrow your pen? Would I borrow your pen? So you're going to include lots of these kinds of sentences in your weekly tests. And I'd like to ask the managers, when the Chinese teachers are preparing the weekly tests, do they give the tests to the foreigners to look at?
Yes.
Yeah. And because I would definitely recommend that, because I like to know what the students are doing when I'm not there. And sometimes when I look through the test, because the tests are being composed by questions and sentences that teachers in the past have sent in. So it's basically, it's kind of a big collection of sentences. And I sometimes will take things out because I think, well, I think they know that question quite well. And they keep on getting confused between ability and in the past and the present. So let's put more of those questions in there, you know? And then at the end of the week when they get their test scores, I will sometimes ask Julian, so how did they do? Oh, they were fine. Okay, I won't worry about anything. But then she might tell me, oh, they made lots of mistakes in the multiple choice areas. So I would like to know which questions they made mistakes on. So, question number 5, they're really confused by that. And question number 10, okay, well, we're going to have to put more questions like that in the test and drill it until they know it. Okay? So, where is it now? Where are we? So that's the first hour. And also, when you're doing the exercises, you really, really hope that they're going to make fewer and fewer and fewer mistakes. Okay? Then the second hour, we move on to must. And again, you can start off with a warm-up exercise. So basically, just like I've done here, we discussed this one, right? I'm too careless, I'm must. But this is not a rule, it's just something that you think you must, right? If you don't do it, you're not going to change, so you must do it, right? Mr. Chen will like this one. Can you do a close-up? Mr. Chen, now... Oh, well, you should tell me this one, because the students won't care. Oh, no, I've done the wrong sentence, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. No, sorry, it's have to. Is it have to there? Yeah, and don't have to, sorry, that's why it's not right. What did I must be more, sorry, excuse me, careful. So what do you think? Mr. Chen, all the English teachers, we love our jobs so much, right? We don't need money. We do it for free. We do it for love, right? Just see those sweet little faces every day. Whoa. So, what would it be then? Mr. Chen
Must.
must pay us because we love our jobs. Oh, so you think because we are dedicated teachers, so he must pay us. Actually, I was thinking, Mr. Chen doesn't have to pay us, no? Well, anyway, that's the sentence that I want. Whether you agree with it or not is your problem. So we got doesn't have to, because we want the don't have to and doesn't have to. And this is reviewing all of their present tense understanding, right? This one, you've got shy students in your class all the time, right? Some students never shut up, some students never open their mouths. So I asked them, and I'll try to specifically teach, what's the meaning of speak up? Because we all know speak is just open your words and open your mouth and say something. But speak up means not to be shy. Raise your hands, tell the teacher how you feel. So again, so what do you think in the class? Do you think that we should all sit here and be silent and respectful and just listen to what our teacher says until his mouth goes dry and white bubbles come out? Like now. I'm getting rabies. So again, it's going to, you must speak up, right? And I'll say, is there a law that says that we must speak up? No, so we don't have to, right? Yes, you have to. Why? Because I said so!
That's a must.
And because your parents pay a lot of money, right? You want to waste your parents' money? Oh, they've got lots. Okay, fine. Tell me their bank account number. Oh, this is top secret, so you mustn't tell anyone. Now this is the thing that, for example, if you aren't prepared, this might, and you haven't done this before, this might catch you off guard, right? Because must and have to, in the book says that there is a difference between must and have to. And on paper there is, but when we're speaking, right, so that you have to do your homework, you must do your homework. Every men in Taiwan must join the army. Men in Taiwan have to join the army. They talk about have to is a necessity, right? And and also must is a necessity and an obligation. And I don't like trying to explain the obligation, but I always like say something is necessary because it's a word that they use quite often. Tricky little things in here, you've got the have to and the has to. So, for example, when they're doing the exercises in the book, you've got to keep on reminding them the have and the has to, because these are commonly made mistakes, right? And then you've got the negative form, doesn't have to, don't have to. And also there is a difference between mustn't and don't have to. Because must and have to are the same, basically. But mustn't and don't have to aren't. How are they different?
You have a choice, but don't have to.
Well, have to. Don't have to means that you don't need.
You have a choice.
You don't need to do something. Yeah, you have a choice. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sorry. Give me the correct answer, and I'm just ignoring you. Sorry. You're right. And this is something that you must not do because there will be trouble if you do. All right. So you wanna show them the difference like that. I have already paid. So you're out having dinner with your friends. I have already paid, so you mustn't. Can you say that? You mustn't pay because I have paid. And the boss will say, oh, sure, I don't mind. You can pay again if you want to. Fine, pay me twice, right? So you can, again, by that example, you can show them how ridiculous that sentence is, right? And so you want to, definitely with those ones, you want to expose them to that. You've got to make sure they understand the difference that must and have to are the same, basically, but mustn't and don't have to, there's a difference there. So, again, you've got a few examples on the board which covers every possible example that they're going to see in the exercises. Oh, one other thing here is that it's a thing that we find a lot, right? It's amazing how many students can't write this word. You know? Because they say mustn't, right? That T is silent. So there's like M-U-S-N''T.
Yes.
So it sounds right, but it's wrong. So it's just a small little thing, but you'd be surprised how many mistakes they make because of that. Okay? So in the first 2 units, in the first week, I've introduced the grammar with a few good examples, and then we get into the beef of writing those exercises. Some are more interesting than others. Okay, so if you look at like the second page here, this is a clear example because there's lots of signs. So again, you can talk about obeying the rules, following the rules. Like you must recycle, you mustn't park here. So there's a few good examples in there. Okay, so that's the first week. Second week, you move on to the second week because I told you I don't want to just go through it all too fast. Here, we got the have to, and then we got the had to, and the will have to. Oh, God, grammar nightmare. So, excuse me, may I take a look at this?
Sure.
Right. There we go, we should be here now. Right, so again, week 3, the goal here is for the students to be able to distinguish between mustn't and don't have to, and to be aware, another thing, they must be aware, they must know that the word must cannot be used in the past tense. It's one of those things I didn't ever think about before I started teaching English, and then I was like, oh, right, yeah. You can't use must in the past tense. If it's going to be in the past, yesterday I must wait for my mother. You often hear students making sentences like that. No, you can't, because it's yesterday I had to, right? And then if you're going to teach had to, possibly there could be questions in the test where it's like, did you have to? So you've got also the interrogative. And then again, things like in the future, like I will do the shopping today, so you won't have to do the shopping next weekend. So again, there's a lot to do here. And where are we? And again, just a few more sentences. Now, I've done these warm-up sentences about 3 times now. So, obviously you want to change up your ideas a little bit. You don't want to keep on doing the same thing every time, unless they like it, or unless you can think of some funny sentences. Well, then it's still a good way to do it, but maybe not spend so much time on it. But this is a very tricky section. It's a real test of their comprehension and grammar ability, So you should be including lots of multiple choice questions in the week, in the weekly tests and worksheets and homework that you hand out. It's really, really, really a lot to do there. Okay, so I go through those very, very, very carefully and make sure that you do the difference between mustn't and have to, and also the different tenses: will, have to, had to, so future, past, and present. Quite tough. Week 2, second hour. Okay, and then here we've got we're going on to suggestions and offers. So we've got shall we and shall I. You know, a lot of students sometimes forget that you can't say shall you, shall he. No, it's only shall I, shall we, because these are suggestions or offers. You know, shall I open the window, or shall we go to the party tonight? So if they don't know things like, if they don't know words like what an offer is or what a suggestion is, I will spend some time to get them knowing these words. You want them to know what is a suggestion, what is an offer. So I'm going to spend a little time making them stand up, and I'll give them a prompt them with, would you? What is it? What we're using here? Sorry. Yeah. Okay. The first one is a suggestion. Shall we? So like, I'll ask a few students to make some sentences. Like I said, like, you know, what would you like us to do? We don't need to study today. And then I'll say, like, shall we go to the park? Or shall we go to the supermarket and buy some things? Shall we take turn kicking teacher Michael? You know? And then, where is it now? Sorry. Also, we got with the will. With the will, there's a whole list of grammar explanations for will, because will can be a warning, like if you don't do your homework, I will punish you. It can be a promise. A promise, I will. It can be a threat. Give me your money or I'll shoot you. Can also be, what other things are there? Oh, mine's gone blank again, sorry. Hopes, yeah. Warnings, on the spot. And actually some of these things, I remember they've learned this in the previous unit. So, shouldn't be too difficult. Alright? Then, we got will and would. Again, we got a polite request. Like, will you be quiet? Would you be quiet? Will you pass me the salt? Would you pass me the salt? So again, we do a lot of oral practice with that. Get them understanding. Will is not just about the future, because they always think like, will you go to America next year? But will can also be it's not a common way that we use, but like it's a way of making a request. Will you? Would you? Can you? Could you? All of these. So you're going to find that sometimes there are like 4, maybe even 4 or 5 modal verbs that could be an answer, which makes making the tests really difficult. Kathleen knows that, right? Because I haven't always done a test, but recently I've been designing some of the tests for this level, and it's really tricky because sometimes there could be more than one answer. You don't know what the context of the conversation is, you know. I'll give you an example of that in a moment. Yeah, okay, I need to erase a few things. Can you give me a minute? So, what I like to do is, it's actually quite fun as well. If you look at page 4, because I always find in the roundup book, sometimes they'll tell you, they'll introduce some grammar, and then they'll give you one exercise to do it in. And then you'll think, well, if that's so important, why did they just put one exercise in there? So maybe here it's going to give you a little bit more time to make a worksheet, because if you have the time to make the worksheet, I really think it's really, really helpful. And include the students or just some funny situation. So one thing I do, and I do this on a piece of paper, and I hand it out. I'm just going to do it very messily on the board. And it's like here, we got one here. Take break. Because as you go further and further and further into this unit, they're going to learn so many different uses for the modal verbs. And it can become very overwhelming. You know, you can be like, oh God. You know, you catch yourself feeling tired and you think, I'm punishing these students with all of this information. So here is a much freer exercise. Let me just do one more. Okay. This is a thing I often say to my kids. I lost a lot of weight and they still call me fatty. Calling me fatty. Okay, and where is it now? Okay, that's enough for now. So they have a worksheet with maybe 8 or 9 sentences, and I give them a space, and I will tell them that, you know, there isn't just one answer. You know. Oh, I also keep on every time I start teaching Roundup, I always make them remind me of all the modal verbs. So I'll say, can you please tell me the modal verbs? You know, can, could, will, would. And every day ask them, and then when we do new ones, then they're going to have must, mustn't, should. You know, keep on reminding them what modal verbs are. And then I'm going to say, okay, so we're going to play a little game. I don't know, whatever reward you want to give them. And I want you to write as many possible answers as you can. So, some of the people who think they're smart will simply write every bloody modal verb there is, but they don't fit. What could fit for this question? Can we? Right. Some of the students, the first time you do this, you know, some of the students in the class, and I'll do it one by one. So I say, guys, I want you to look at number 1, and I want you to write all of the modal verbs that could fit in this question. So you give them a minute, and then, okay, so how many verbs do you have? And someone says, I've got 5. And 5 different answers. Okay, some of them I've just got 1. So I ask them all to stand up. Okay, so who can give me 1? Can. Okay, who's got can? Then I find out who's got can. Okay, yeah, can. Can we take a break? You're asking for permission. And then you'll find that maybe one student has just 1 word, and I'll say, well, you know, there are more, but sit down. And so the ones who have got more and more can stand up. Any more answers? Could. Yeah, right, because can and could are basically the same, right? So, okay, who wrote can and could? And, anybody just have can and could, and those ones sit down.